أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم صدق الله العظيم. The verse which I have recited translates as follows. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. A likeness of his light is as a pillar on which is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass, and the glass is like a brightly shining star which is lit from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western. And the oil of that lamp gives light, even though fire does not even touch it, and it is light upon light. Allah guides to his light whom he pleases, and Allah sets forth examples for human beings, and Allah is knower of all things. And this is chapter 24, Surah Al-Nūr, verse 35. Last week, the Hindu festival of Diwali was celebrated. This word Diwali means a row of lights, little lights or lamps in a row. And it is celebrated by lighting small lamps. It is said to symbolize the victory of light over darkness, the victory of knowledge over ignorance, and good over evil. According to the Oxford Dictionary of World Religions, Diwali is celebrated by all Hindus, but it is the most important festival for merchants, bankers, and businessmen because the main religious event is the worship of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth in the Hindu religion. And there is a website of the Brahmin Society of North London, and that says the houses and its surrounds are illuminated with oil lamps so that Lakshmi can see her way clearly. On this day of the worship of Lakshmi, Indian merchants and bankers open their new account books, and after ending the financial year, they offer worship to Lakshmi. And the Encyclopedia Britannica says about Diwali that among Hindus, the most widespread custom is the lighting of small earthenware lamps filled with oil on the night of the new moon to invite the presence of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. So here we may ask this question, what connection can there be between these two ideas, light on the one hand and wealth? And looking into this, the verse of the Holy Quran which I recited, verse 35 of chapter 24, and that is a well-known verse, that verse is only about light, the light of God which brings guidance. And the verses after this verse 35 are as follows, if I may read them in translation. They go on to say that the light of Allah is in houses which Allah has allowed to be raised high and his name to be remembered within them. In those houses are people who glorify God in the mornings and in the evenings, and people who are not diverted by merchandise and buying and selling from the remembrance of God and keeping up prayer and giving of the due charity. And these are a people who fear a day in which the hearts and the eyes of human beings will all turn round, and that Allah will give them the best reward for what they did and give them more from His grace. And Allah provides without measure for whom He pleases. So this is how verse 38 ends. And Allah provides without measure for whomever He pleases. The key features in this festival of Diwali are found in that first verse which I recited and in the next verse, 3 verses, whose translation I've just read. And these key features of Diwali are: number 1, light; number 2, people's houses in which that light is found; number 3, those houses being raised high or exalted. And here we remember that as part of Diwali, homes are decorated. The 4th feature is people earning wealth by trading. And the 5th feature is accounting of wealth, those account books which were mentioned. And if you didn't spot this 5th one, accounting of wealth, when I was reading the verses of the Holy Quran, do they mention accounting of wealth? Well, those verses, as I said, end with this promise: وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. And Allah provides without measure, without hisab, for whom He pleases. And this word hisab means accounting. The Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had no knowledge at all of the Hindu religion. He could not have composed these verses from his own mind, which are referring exactly to the features of Diwali. Now someone might say this is just a coincidence. Now if these verses which I read had only mentioned one feature connected with Diwali, for example light, it could be considered as just a coincidence that there is light at Diwali and this verse mentions light. But these verses are mentioning 5 key features. So it's extremely unlikely that this is just a coincidence. So these verses, we believe, are referring to Diwali. Now, the first verse I read, I actually recited it, 35. It begins as follows: Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Al-Nūr samawati wal ardh. Now, since light is a creation of Allah, He cannot be light. And so these words seem to go against the basic teaching of the Quran, that nothing in the world can be God, because the words are saying Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. So Muslim scholars and interpreters of the Quran say that, well, what Allah is the light means that He actually illuminates the whole world. Not that He is the light, but He lights up everything. But we may notice here that according to the Hindu religion, Krishna is the source of all light that comes from luminous objects. Even the sun, they say, according to their belief, is not the source of its own light, but is merely passing on to us light which comes from Krishna or God. So this statement in the Quran, Allah is the light, is like a statement we might expect from the Hindu religion, because that religion teaches that things in this world are actually in themselves a manifestation of God and not separate from God, as Islam tells us. So the Holy Quran may have adopted this style to make the point that these verses are commenting on a Hindu festival and Hindu tradition. Now, there are many more general points to be made about these verses of the Holy Quran, but I'll confine myself today to just those which show that these verses are a commentary on the festival of Diwali. The first verse, number 35, says that the light of Allah is sent by Him for the guidance of people. It is not that people need to light lamps to show God the way into their houses. Of course, the lighting of lamps by people could just be symbolic to indicate that they are willing to receive God's light in their houses, not that God will come to their houses by seeing His way using their lights. And this verse informs us that the lamp of Allah's light is placed high and is also protected. It is, so to speak, in a glass. Now, that light mentioned here is in fact the revelation of Allah preserved in the Holy Quran. And the verse also says that the lamp which gives out the light of Allah is lit from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western. La sharqiyatim wala gharbiya. Now, before Islam, prophets arose in different lands with their books, and their followers eventually came to believe that there was something special and sacred about their lands, and this was why God had chosen them, only them, to receive so much guidance and wisdom, which could not be matched anywhere else in the world. And the Holy Quran says here that the fuel for the light of Allah comes from a tree which is neither of the east nor of the west. Its teachings do not arise from any particular country of east or west. Now, some people claim that the religions which originated in India and further east of India, that they are much more philosophical and subtle and more in touch with the inner human spirit than the religions which arose in the countries to the west of India, like Arabia or the Palestine area. The Holy Quran says here that the light of God is not confined to the east, and nor indeed is it confined to the west. The next verse, number 36, mentions houses into which God and His light enter. And it says, houses which Allah has permitted to be raised high and His name to be remembered within them. Now, how God enters into a house is through its dwellers remembering Him and mentioning Allah, doing zikrullah. And it is such houses that in God's sight are raised high and lofty, and not buildings which are decorated with lights and look beautiful and attractive and people stand outside admiring them. And more than just remembering His name, the people in these houses, the verse says, people in these houses are such a kind of people that neither merchandise, in other words trading, neither merchandise nor selling diverts them from the remembrance of God and from the keeping up of prayer or the giving of the due charity. So here we have a mention of earning wealth, merchandise selling, which is an activity which, as we saw, is particularly remembered at Diwali. And the Holy Quran says that the light of God enters those houses whose residents do not put earning wealth above their duty to God and above their duty to fellow human beings. The desire to acquire wealth is legitimate, lawful, understandable, unobjectionable, and in fact it is necessary. But the same God who legitimizes wealth and who, as people believe, writes that wealth in our fate, they say, Hindus and Muslims, that same God, whether it is God as represented in Islam or the God as in the human conception, the same God who legitimizes wealth also teaches us to view the acquisition of wealth in the right perspective and with a sense of proportion. It cannot become the object of life while you neglect the remembrance of God. And remembrance of God is not just chanting Allah, Allah, but remembrance of God means remembering His teachings of honesty, truth, and fair dealing. So earning of wealth can't become the object of life, neglecting the remembrance of God and neglecting our spiritual duties like prayer and our duties of doing good to other human beings, which is mentioned here as charity. Now, regarding this last point about business and charity, there is a concept in Western capitalism known as social responsibility in business. It teaches that when you do business, it is not only simply to make a profit and earn money, but a business also has responsibilities to society, which it must fulfill, which people running the business, profiting from it, must fulfill. And this concept is indicated here in the Quran when it mentions people who are not diverted by their commercial activities from the remembrance of Allah and the giving of charity. Now these verses, as I've already mentioned, end by saying, and Allah provides without measure, without hisab, for whom He pleases. Now there's a well-known international magazine known as Forbes Business Magazine. And in an issue of it from about 8 years ago, it actually mentions Diwali, even though it's actually a business magazine, international business magazine. What it says about Diwali is this: several key Diwali traditions are centered around money. It is considered a particularly auspicious, in other words, lucky or fortunate, auspicious time to acquire new assets and make new investments. So that is what that magazine says. When people invest money, they hope for a good return. The Holy Quran here promises, in regard to trading and selling, that Allah gives a return without measure, بغير hisab. Now, any financial return in this world can always be expressed as a number or percentage. It has a hisab. The entire wealth of the whole world can be written down as so many trillions or thousands of trillions of pounds or dollars. So that is hisab. That is not without hisab. But there is another wealth that people can earn which cannot be measured by any form of accounting, and that is spiritual wealth. And the way to earn spiritual wealth is by remembering that there is an account of your deeds. There's an account book as well of your deeds, which has a balance on its invisible sheet. And that is more important than the balance of monetary profit and loss as recorded in a business ledger. In these verses, the people who do not let the earning of wealth stand in the way of remembering God and of giving their monetary due to society and community. Those people, it says about them, as I have already read, that they are people who fear a day in which the hearts and eyes will turn about. Their hearts will turn round, their eyes will turn round. And one meaning of this is that these people realize that if they ignore their real duties in this life, then in the next life they will be terrified. That is the state of being terrified, hearts and eyes turning about. They will be terrified when facing Allah's punishment. That is one meaning. But it can happen in this life as well. There have been many revolutions in history, such, for example, as the Russian Revolution in 1917, when the ordinary people of a country rose up against those who had been exploiting them financially, and those who had been exploiting people, while themselves living unconcerned in great luxury. The ordinary people of the country rose up against them, and they butchered and slaughtered their masters and the wealth owners in very brutal ways. So their hearts and eyes would have been turning around, even literally. So that was a result. Of course, no one can justify that butchering or slaughtering, but that was a consequence of their neglect of properly spending their wealth. So, in festivals and celebrations, if people are asking God to bestow wealth upon them, they must also remember the consequences if they neglect their duties to God and to other human beings and to society and community. God or Allah is not a money bag, and He is not a money tree to be called upon only when you want to increase your wealth. So in the end, in this khutbah, we congratulate Hindus everywhere in the world on the Diwali festival and hope that they will appreciate the wise teachings of the Holy Quran, from which they will benefit even while they are following their own ancient traditions. And their own ancient traditions, no doubt, originally stem from God. So, may Allah enable, of course, us as well, and our Hindu fellow human beings to benefit from the teachings of the Holy Quran. Ameen. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malikun barru raufur rahim.